Hi, this is Anup Yadav, and today I want to talk about Cold War 2.0. So, whether you know it or not, but Cold War 2.0 is already active, and we all are parties to it, knowingly or unknowingly. Which are the principal parties of 2.0? Yes, I said that we all are parties, but there are certain principal parties to this Cold War 2.0. But before knowing the principal parties of Cold War 2.0, I think it's important that we have a recap of what happened in Cold War 1.0. So just after the end of Second World War, we know that the Western forces they were advancing towards Germany from the western side. Italy, France, Germany side, and the Eastern forces, especially the forces led by Russia, they were advancing from the eastern side towards Germany. So both of these sides they kind of met in Germany, and a possible truce was the Berlin Wall. So a wall was created in the middle of Germany, and this wall continued until 1989. It was only in 1989 that Germany was finally united. Until then, there was West Germany and East Germany. So after this wall was created in 1945, the symbolic wall was created in 1945 itself. We saw that the United States it developed the nuclear bomb, and with the development of nuclear bomb, there started a new race towards nuclear supremacy, and we saw that the whole of the the Cold War, it was the premise of that Cold War was nuclear supremacy, and we saw different kind of heated arguments, heated confrontations, not actual, but yeah, there were a few instances where both the parties of the Cold War, the Western Bloc and the Eastern Bloc, they stood front, nose to nose, and at any moment, if you remember, let me point out one important instance, and that is the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1963. It was that particular instance, it was very much inevitable. I mean, everyone was anticipating that a war could break out at any moment. However, cooler has prevailed and we avoided that particular war. So, the principal parties of the Cold War 1.0 was mainly United States from the western side. It had its allies in the west, UK, France, Germany mainly, and the eastern side it was Soviet Union because at that time the whole of Eastern Europe, Russia, and other Central Asian nations they were combinedly part of one bloc, the Soviet bloc. So we can say that the Eastern bloc was Soviet Union. But this time around, if you look into the Cold War 2.0, the principal parties to Cold War 2.0, then they are slightly different than what they used to be during Cold War 1.0. So first, let's talk about the Western side. You see, the principal party from the western side is the still United States, but the role of other parties, the role of its allies would be greatly exaggerated this time because unlike Cold War 1.0, when World War II just happened in Europe and Europe was literally destroyed, decimated. That's why Europe was mostly recovering, mostly reconstructing itself after the end of Second World War, so they could not very much participate. I would say they did not very much actively participated in Cold War 1.0 because it was largely a show of force for United States and Russia. But this time around, Cold War 2.0, the Western allies, France, Russia, no, France, UK, Germany, they would be active members of Cold War 2.0 from the Western front. And if we talk about the Eastern Bloc's members, this time around there is a drastic change. First of all, we do not have any Soviet Union. The Soviet Union that existed during the Cold War 1.2, it was dissolved in 1991, and I would say the successor state of Soviet Union is Russia now, Russia alone. And came out of Russia many countries, most of the Eastern European countries, the Central Asian republics. However, Russia is still going to play a crucial role because Russia is still a military superpower, although not an economic one, but it is a military superpower, knowing because of its advanced military hardware, its S-400 like defense systems, its Sukhoi warplanes, and on top of that, the main factor why Russia is still a military superpower because it has the world's largest arsenal of nuclear weapons. Out of the total around 12,000 something nuclear warheads, Russia has around 6,000. So this shows the kind of gravity that Russia holds when it comes to military muscle. So the principal party is still a principal. So the principal party in the Eastern Bloc is going to be first Russia, the second, and a drastically different party, and something that you would not have hoped in the Cold War 2 1.2 is China. China from 1980s onward, it has emerged as an economic supergiant. I mean, from 1980s onward, when China started its economic rebuilding, its economic revival, it was largely with the help of United States. China and United States signed the Treaty of Friendship, I think around in 1979. So from 1979 onwards, Western FDI, Western money, started flowing into China, and China gradually started developing as an industrial hub first, and later it is right now developing as a technological power, and simultaneously it is developing as an military power as well. So the second party is China. Right now, China is the world's second largest economy. It is a technology hub. It is increasingly diverting its economic muscle into to build its military muscle. So the second party, and I would say a party with much more significant than Russia is going to be China. Because right now, if we look into geopolitical discussions, it is not Russia which is the main cause of concern for the United States. Rather, it is China which is the main cause of concern for the United States. So apart from these would be the two principal parties from the Western Bloc, from the Eastern Bloc. But there are two other parties which I would categorize them as semi-principal, and these are North Korea and Iran. You see, the one first. Let's first talk about North Korea. North Korea is a victim of European, or let's say, the Western sanctions for a long time now. Its leader, its dictator Kim Jong Un, he has refused to dial down its nuclear program, and we all know that North Korea is a declared nuclear state. Its ballistic missile program is among the best in the world. So that's why North Korea is also have some military weight that the Eastern Bloc could use for its advantage against the West. The fourth is Iran. I mean, Iran is not a very big economic or military power, but it is also a nuclear state. Although not a declared but one, but we all know that Iran has the capability, has the know-how how to become a nuclear weaponized state. And the whole West, especially the United States, it has imposed severe sanctions upon Iran just so that it does not reach it does not conclude its nuclear weapons program. So these would be the principal parties from the Eastern Bloc. You see, one major thread, one common thread that is binding all of these Eastern Bloc parties is American sanctions. All of these countries, they are victims of American sanctions. Not just American sanctions, but Western sanctions, and that's why uh, they come together. That's why they have this common cause to fight against American sanctions. However, it's not. I mean, if we talk about Cold War 1.0, because drawing comparisons from Cold War 1.0 is important if we want to have a deeper, a comprehensive understanding of Cold War 2.0. And that is also, I mean, first is military might, military influence, but the second is diplomatic influence. That is something is, I would say, diplomatic influence has a much higher weight than what it had during the Cold War 1.0. At that time, the flow of communication was very slow, and that's why whatever countries were doing, whether it's a dictatorship or a democracy, whatever they were doing, the flow of that information to the masses of different countries, it was very slow. I mean, most of the time, the common people did not know what is happening in the United States, what a dictator is doing, or what a democratically elected leader is doing. But right now, this flow of information is very swift, is very rapid, and that's why if Russia does something bad or good, it is known to the people of Africa, Asia, or South America. And similarly, if a United States president, a democratically elected president, or India's prime minister, he does something bad or good, it is also known to the whole of the world. And that's why uh, this, this flow of information, this gives relevance, this gives importance, significance to to diplomacy, and that's why diplomacy has gained a higher weight than what it had during the Cold War 1.0. And this time around, you see, for the past 70 years, I'm talking about since the end of Second World War, the Middle Eastern region, the Middle Eastern monarchies, the oil-rich monarchies, they are under the influence of United States. US has good relations with most of these countries, and in the whole of the Middle Eastern region, there are many US defense bases, Air Force, Navy, Army bases, and that's why this is kind of a garrison for the other United States. But increasingly, we are seeing that tensions are being brewing up between the United States and the Middle Eastern region. Recently, we saw that the tensions between the United States and Saudi Arabia it came to the surface, and also with China, and I mean the role of China would be increasing in this region because United States wants to. It is a democracy, and we all know that modern democracies they're supposed to be liberal. And as a consequence of this liberal feature, if you look into Middle East, what is the common source of power in Middle East? That is oil. But the liberal nature of Western democracies, the liberal nature of a modern Western democracies, it is asking them to switch away from oil and switch towards the renewable sources of energy, switch towards electricity. And when the West says something about switching away from fossil fuels, it literally pinches the whole of Middle Eastern region because they're dependent upon oil for their survival. And this is where China comes in. Although China is also part of this Paris summit, but the thing is, China is still a developing economy. And although it has a per capita GDP of around $12,000, but it's far lower than advanced Western countries. And that's why China is not promising, or I would say China would continue to use more and more fossil fuels for many decades to come. So the source of income for the Middle Eastern monarchies, for the oil-rich monarchies, it is going to be China. So it is obviously in their interest that they align their policies, they align their decisions with Chinese policies. So this is a cause of concern. This is a cause of rift between United States and Saudi Arabia, which is the leader of OPEC, Organization for Petroleum Exporting Countries. Recently, we saw that it is a China which mediated between Saudi Arabia and Iran, something that has been traditionally the role of United States. So you see, these are the factors which highlight that Cold War 2.2 is very much a reality. And yeah, it's not as pronounced as it was Cold War 1.0, but it is very much reality. And strategic quarters, they are already discussing about it. They know that it's an under the table Cold War 2.0 is already in the play. And given time, because you see, one more point that I want to talk about why Cold War 2.0 is going to become a reality is that the growing protectionism. Protectionism is something, I mean, since the dissolution of Soviet Union in 1991, we saw that different countries, especially the Eastern European countries, they became liberated from the yoke of Soviet and globalization, the flow of trade, the flow of money around the world, it increased rapidly. Countries around the world they dropped their trade barriers, and trade was, I mean, I would not say entirely, but substantially free. Countries could trade with each other very freely. However, something this very free nature of trade, it is now under pressure because of these strategic concerns that countries have, especially the Western and Eastern Bloc, these countries are again raising their trade barriers. This is called protectionism. Whether countries are protecting their domestic markets from merchandise of a foreign countries, from services of foreign countries. This is called protectionism, and we all know that the protectionism is on the rise. And a very potent example of this, the trade war that Donald Trump started against China. And right now, United States has this chips policy under which I think they are limiting the access of chips under 5 nanometer of thickness to China, so that China does not use this chip for its military use. I mean, it is a valid concern for the United States, because the US is sharing its technology with China for civilian use, so that China could use this technology to uh, to provide electronic component around the world. But China is diabolical in nature. We all know that, and it is using this sensitive technology for its military development, which is ultimately going to threaten the United States. That's why United States brought certain policies restricting China from having access to this critical technology. So this is not just an isolated example. There are other protectionist measures that are also in play, and they are necessary as well because extensive dependency upon strategic rivals is not a strategically good decision. And in order to reduce this critical dependency in critical sectors, these protectionist barriers they are being raised across the world. So these are the few concerns. These are the few points that are really going to be the major points why Cold War 2.0 is a reality. And I hope you got a slight clarity about what is Cold War 2.0 and what are the factors that makes Cold War 2.0 a reality. And if you like my content, if you like me to further making such content, do subscribe, share my content.